Tango 1 at the top, we are at follow protocol. 10-4, Tango 1, you have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action. Find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're ruining that Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
So welcome to the Tango 1 podcast. I'm Tony Smith. I'm a retired cop and tactical team leader, currently the owner of the Garage Gym Strength and Conditioning and Tango 1 Solutions. I'm joined every week by my co-host, fireman and garage gym trainer, Casey Wright. Our mission is to challenge you every week to do more and be more and to take action against your problems and weaknesses. Today, we are joined by Pete Shaw, CrossFit Games competitor. He's from Ottawa, Ontario, and he's the co-owner of CrossFit NCR. He's like I said, a games competitor. He's also part of the CrossFit seminar team. So thanks for coming on, Pete. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, boys.
Looking forward to chatting, man.
So you competed in 2020, right?
Yeah, just this past year.
Where was the games held this last year?
Oh, it was actually held in a couple different places. So the games was held, the final was held in Aromas at the ranch, which is the original location of the first CrossFit Games.
Right.
So the top 5 women and top 5 men went to the ranch for the final. Originally, it was supposed to be the top 30 that went there, and that included myself. And then last minute, because of COVID, their county in California, where they are in Aromas, didn't allow them to have that many competitors, that many people there. So last minute, they had to make a switch. So we had sort of like a prelim competition at our respective gyms on location. So I essentially competed alone here at my gym. We recorded everything. It was very, very well thought out. It was really cool how they organized it. And, we had as many people as we could with social distancing rules and all that come and cheer on. They flew in a judge to come judge me, and we got the workout done. And then, we send everything in for video review, and it's pretty cool. So you can go online, you can Google or go on YouTube and Google CrossFit Games, and 25 of the competitors only have their performances in their own gyms. And then from that stage, the top 5 of each men and women went to Aromas to compete in the final, the in-person final. So it's kind of, I guess it happened everywhere. It happened all over the world.
Very cool. Did you find that kind of a good or advantage being in your home gym, or were you kind of a little bit bummed that you weren't in the big Coliseum basically that they have for the games?
It was cool. It was cool to have it at the home gym for sure. Just because, it's not every day your friends and family, your entire friends and family get to come watch you compete at the highest level, right? You go, if you travel usually for these big competitions, a few people can come and that's about it. You don't get these big groups. So that was really cool. It was a nice opportunity for the community. I felt more or less comfortable. The disadvantage was as a gym owner, as part owner of CrossFit NCR, I felt a little bit responsible for my own competition, which wasn't ideal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to partly run it, partly compete. So as much as my business partners were doing an awesome job, and one of them was my coach last year, they were running the show and stuff. You just can't help start thinking logistics and stuff, and which obviously you shouldn't be if you're trying to compete. And generally, my strengths in CrossFit are the workouts that happen outside, lots of running, hot objects, things like that. And generally the tests within the gym are, more barbell cycling, classic gymnastics, and classic CrossFit movements like burpees and stuff, which I'm still decent at. I had to do all those to get to the game, but if I had a choice, I would probably choose some of the events that they did in person at the games.
Right. Right.
For sure. So like logistics, that must have been a nightmare, but I would then assume it gives you some kind of advantage. I mean, I know that from the few little lifting competitions I've done, you know, when you're like box squatting on your own box all the time and then you go and you do a lift and that box is just like a 1/4 inch off or has a little bit more give, you have like that familiarity, you know, is kind of gone. But
sure, you know what it does? It adds a level of comfort, but no, I wouldn't say an advantage because everyone's in the same boat, right? It's not like I was the only one who got to use my own barbell. Everyone else got to use their own equipment for the most part. So I wouldn't necessarily call it an advantage. Definitely increased the level of comfort and maybe brought the nerves down a little bit, even though like I was still, for that first workout, my heart was going to explode out of my chest. Like it was crazy, man. That first workout. Yeah.
I could see the lifting definitely be like similar, but I feel like it'd be hard to check out. Like say if you had to do like a run, swim, run or something like that, doing it on your own and in your like own location, as opposed to running like neck and neck with 30 other guys. Like I think that'd be easier to feed off of if you're in a group.
Yeah. It's actually funny. Yeah. I find the opposite. I find in the crowd atmosphere with the noise, like I thrive off of the cheering to hit those big lifts. Right. Like even Olympic lifting, like just because I've been brought up and I learned Olympic lifting in like a loud atmosphere, not the classic silence of weightlifting. Like when we did, so the strength event was a winter max front squat, and like I hit a PR. I would say that pretty much everyone hit a PR, but I've got the group in the background, and I'm like, guys, like you got to cheer as loud as you possibly can. Like I need you to will this weight up, right? And then so I hit the lift. Whereas these longer events, I feel like, and maybe it's just because it's a strength of mine, is these longer endurance type events, is I kind of settle into a pace. I get the blinders on, and I just I'm in my zone. I'm just kind of zen and focused on keeping just the same pace the entire time. So I don't necessarily need those people beside me to push on that.
So let's go back. So you said, I think in your bio, I was reading it, you started CrossFit in 2014.
Yeah, so I joined our gym, the gym that I co-own right now. I joined it as a member in 2014. Actually, I joined it in 2013, about halfway through the year. Before that, I was doing CrossFit. So I've been doing CrossFit since about 2010. But just through the website, the main website, CrossFit.com. Actually, my neighbor was a firefighter, Casey, and he walked over. She's like, "Hey, all the dudes at the station are doing this like crazy thing called CrossFit. Like, you should check it out. A bunch of military dudes are doing it." At the time, I was playing hockey, and he saw me every day training in my dad's like garage gym. So he walked over, told me about this. I was like, "Oh, it sounds really cool. This is exactly what I need. Like military, firefighter, first responder, like all around strength and endurance is, to me, that seemed like the perfect transferability to like being a hockey player, because hockey is like a very well-rounded sport in terms of athleticism and all that strength endurance." So I started dabbling with it, and then fast forward a few years, you graduate university, and then I find out that there's CrossFit gyms that exist. I'm like, holy shit! Like this is way bigger than I thought. It's not just a website. So I started in 2013, and then 2014 I started working here as a personal trainer, and then I did my first competition.
And then so between 2014 and then becoming like the 29th fittest man in the world, like how much work you must have. Like one thing that amazes me about CrossFit is, I've dabbled in it. We're bench, deadlift, squat gym here. And what amazes me about CrossFit is like, to improve your bench, deadlift, and squat takes so much work. But now you got to implement all these other movements. Like what does a typical training day look like for somebody who's going to the games, or a training week maybe is probably a better, like your splits?
It's evolved. It's evolved, to be honest. It's what a training week looks like. It's evolved over the course of the past, 7-8 years of my training career. Like when I first started out, like I was just trying to absorb as much as possible. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just following the two guys that founded this gym, Paul Tremblay, Reza Machkouri. I showed up, and they were the guys they were sort of the shit. Like everyone in Ottawa was like, these are the guys that are the best at CrossFit. Like they went to the CrossFit Games on a team in 2012, and so everyone wanted to learn from them. So including myself. So I walked in and I was like, and I found out that there was CrossFit gyms. I also found out that there was like the Open and the CrossFit Games. So I was like, done with hockey. I'm like, shit, I'm still itching to compete a little bit. Like I'm gonna try and go with this. So I walked in. I was like, guys, I want to compete. And so I'm just trying to absorb as much as possible from them. But I think they'll tell you as well, like in the early days, like they didn't know what they were doing either. Like CrossFit, what's interesting about CrossFit, man, is that it's such a new sport, is that the way to train for it is evolving constantly. And at first, everyone was bad at everything. You know, like in the early days of CrossFit, like even at the CrossFit Games, you look at some of those old videos of like literally people, the fittest people in the world for that year by CrossFit standards. And we people in our gym here just coming in, like hitting one workout a day and like working a normal job with like 3 kids, and they're fitter than those people that were winning the games back in like 2009. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
The evolution has just been pushed so much. And so it looks nothing now like it did before, but I can tell you now, like even like you're right, there's a lot of stuff. So you gotta hit it all. But the nice thing about all these movements is, I mean, you guys know this: squat, bench, deadlift. Like these are functional movements. There's transferability between movements. Like you get good at bench press, you're going to get good at push-ups. You're going to get good at dips. You're going to get good at bench press and pull-ups. You're going to get good at muscle-ups, right? So it's and the list goes on and on. Like all you got to do is work on technique a little bit, and all of a sudden you have a good snatch, right? Like obviously there's more to it than just snapping your fingers. You got to practice it. But the transferability of movements allows you to not have to train everything every single day. And if you're smart with your training and you plan it out appropriately, then you can get the most bang for your buck. And the number one thing is just working on your weaknesses, right? And it's the same thing. You look at, like, you guys are a powerlifting gym, so I use the West Side barbell analogy. Like you talk to Louis Simmons, like what's he going to be doing? He's going to find the weakness on the lifter. Like where is it there? Is it their pull off the floor on the deadlift? Is it the lockout? Like what's the issue? Is it the upper back starts to round too much? Like, okay, well, let's hammer that. In the accessory work, we're going to hammer the weaknesses. We're going to crank the upper back strength. We're going to work hip thrusts and glute bridges to get that lockout strength at the top. Right? It's the same thing in CrossFit, but you work on those weaknesses that are the movements are your weaknesses, or the movement combinations. And generally speaking, if you attack those weaknesses and focus more on those than your strengths, then overall you're gonna get fitter, right? Because it's an evaluation of your fitness across all these modalities. So you don't necessarily need to work on too much your strength because you're already really good at it. You got to bring up your weaknesses because they're what's dragging you down in the overall.
I love that you're saying that right now. Everybody listen up.
Yeah, such a simple concept or theory, but it's so difficult sometimes for people to do, because it's like you want to do things you're good at. You want to continue to improve like that one lift or something because it gives you that like gratification and like I'm doing something good. But being able to like acknowledge your weakness, stepping back and doing it, and then now improving on it, like those are things that become like your strengths. And then these things that you were great and love to do are now going to peak and get even higher because you fix that weekness in the back.
That's exactly it. It's crazy. It's crazy when you actually focus on that stuff, and you put your strengths on the shelf for like 2-3 weeks, a month, maybe, a little more. You touch it here and there, but you don't really train it. And then you like hammer your weaknesses, and all of a sudden you hit a PR and something you haven't touched in a while as a strength, and you're like, holy shit! Like what I do, it's like this must be magic. No, you worked on the things that you sucked at and you got a little better at them, right? But like I'll tell you right now, it's not easy to work on your weaknesses day in and day out. Like it takes a toll mentally. So sometimes you got to throw in that, that carrot for the athlete. Like I know I have a different coach this year, but my business partner was my coach for the previous 4 years. And we would have daily conversations about this. I'd be like, dude, you're killing me on these weaknesses. Like mentally I'm just drained. Like I can't go into the gym and do another just workout that I just suck at so much, right? Like throw me a bone here for a little bit. He'd be like, okay, so we back off a bit and then we come at it again. But that's the mentality you have to have a little bit.
Yeah, well, even running the gym, like our gym's a community-based gym, just like yours. Like we train here mostly primarily in groups. And that's the thing, like you want to make these people stronger. You know that, we need to, let's say like get everybody's hamstrings a little bit stronger, their glutes a little bit stronger so we can deadlift a little bit more. However, there's a certain point where like the main contributing factor to success, no matter what level, in my opinion, is going to be that consistency. And if you can keep people coming back happy and enjoying their workout, they're going to come back and get better, like, just real natural in a natural way. So there's that fine line. I can only imagine when you're training with that kind of modality at that kind of level and how important is your coach? Like that's what we try to preach. I have a coach, you have a coach. It's great to hear that you say that too.
Yeah, the coach is huge. Like it's an unbiased. The coach is just that unbiased opinion, that unbiased, programming mindset. Whether it's programming they're helping you with, whether it's analyzing your results, whether it's like giving you that extra little push, that motivation psychologically to help you take it to the next step. Like it's super, super important. And what's funny is I used to personally think that for me, I didn't need a coach. And, I sort of took on that role for other people in the gym. I was a coach and I guess back in the day, I didn't formally view them as coaches, but my training partners, I had training partners that I worked with and worked out with almost every single day. And these were my business partners and some other guys and girls. They became sort of the coaching crew, right? Like we coached each other, we helped each other out. We were all coaches and leaders in the community. And it wasn't a single person that was, helping me with my technique or my programming or my workouts. We all worked on it as a group and we'd all hold each other accountable. At this point, the way that we run the gym and sort of our lifestyle and, we've all got kids now and stuff. It's harder to make the schedules match up. So there's less training together. So now I've gone out and I've hired a coach, but it's still just as important, right? When you lose that feedback, then you realize how important it really is. Not just the accountability, but just that person to look objectively at your results and how you're doing in these workouts and saying like, this is what you need, rather than me looking at it and being like, I felt good or bad on these days and this is what I should do next. Sometimes how you feel isn't really what you should be doing, right? You got to look at the data and say, okay, this is the data is telling a story and this is going to push me in the right direction.
Good. How do you find that you manage kind of your days in the way of like separating when you're training for yourself or training other people or managing the gym? Do you have times where you'll like just work out with the class, or do you just set aside your own hour? Like, 'cause I know when working with the class, sometimes you get caught up in like, okay, I'm going to skip this set 'cause I need to go coach over here. And you don't fully get your own like best workout. What do you do for kind of maintaining that?
So it looks different now with COVID, right? We're in lockdown in Ontario. And so everyone's at home and we have been in and out of lockdown the entire year. Middle of the season, last season, like I was training for the games and we were in lockdown and I was just training at home, like trying to train for the CrossFit Games. So it looks different now. What it looks like right now is because we're prescribing at home, more or less body weight or limited equipment workouts for our athletes. Those aren't the workouts that I'm doing. I need to, like we talked about earlier, Tony, I need to make sure that I'm touching all those movements that I need to compete at the highest level. So sometimes I'm throwing in a body weight workout like that once in a while, but to join the community and to chat with everyone and to just be part of the group. But for the most part, I'm sort of following my own programming and I'm marching to the beat of my own drum a little bit just for the sake of the season. Typically, COVID-free situation, right? The gym would be buzzing. I'd coach a couple classes. There'd be some time in between for training. We'd have an open gym, and within that open gym session, maybe some people would jump in training with me. We might do the class workout. We might do something else. And most days I would jump in on a class workout. So, the programming for the last 4 years, I said that my business partner was my coach. He also programmed for the gym. So, one of the workouts that was included in my programming on a daily basis was the gym workout. So I would jump in with the class. I would maybe coach a class, and then anything else over and above that, I would sort of do in the open gym time, and I would invite whoever, had the time available to them to work out with me. And that's kind of, now COVID, I've got a kid now. It's a different management system. So we'll see how. Right now it's working. Right now I've got set times that I work out. I've got a shed at home that's filled with equipment that I try to get to sometimes. Once in a while I'll pop into the gym here, and I try to balance between those two things. I'll usually work at one session at 6 a.m. and then another session mid-morning after I drop the kid off at daycare, or if he doesn't have daycare, then he'll hang out with me, and I'll work out a second time while he naps. And then and balance it just like that. So we'll see. This is the first. He actually just started daycare, and he's going into his second week. So we'll see. We'll see if the routine can stick to it, right? This is in theory, this is how it's going to work, but we'll see. The wife is finishing mat leave too, so she's going back to work next week, and we just spent the last couple of weeks just ironing out the schedule,
Yeah, I've got two little boys, man, myself. They've grown up in this gym. They're here constantly. It was actually when my second boy was old enough to go to school, I was kind of bummed out that he wasn't always tagging along with me, doing his little, flipping his little tire and jumping on the boxes while I'm working out. So
exactly, yeah. So yeah, he'll be a gym rat for sure.
Yeah, last question before we move on to the stuff that you're really working on and the stuff I really want to hit on. Okay, it's the 2021 games. You've got to. What is the one big lift you're looking you're hoping that's the number they're going to call, and what's the one you're hoping they're not going to call? What's your lift of choice?
So in terms of movement or workout, type of workout.
Let's go with movements because that's more what we're in.
Okay, so let's see. So it's the 2021 game.
COVID's gone. Stadium's full. What's the event you're hoping for?
The one that I want them to call, I'm gonna say a one rep max deadlift.
Nice.
So one rep deadlift for my strength for pure, as far as a pure strength movement. For a totally different reason. I feel I've improved a lot on my snatch lately. It used to be a weakness, but I haven't been able to really show off my improvements in it lately. So, cause I didn't really have it in the season last year, tested at the highest level. So I'd enjoy that just because I want to test myself on it. The one I least want to see, probably a one rep max jerk. I'm not great at heavy shoulder to overhead for one rep. I'm working on it though. It's on the list of things that we're working on a regular basis. So maybe by the time 2021 rolls around, I'll have a different answer for you. That's the plan, right? But right now it's a little bit on the low side.
I love the answer with that snatch. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm going to read in an ad real quick. So if you guys want to just take a second to refill your drinks, we're in a different studio today. I got to turn my head here. Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized for you and your family? And will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? When you work with Stephen Kidd, your local Edward Jones financial advisor, he focuses on what's important to you. You'll work together and use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. And you'll partner to help your strategy stay on track. Contact Stephen Kidd today at 519-734-8599. That's 519-734-8599. Edward Jones, member, Canadian Investor Protection Fund. All right, let's keep rolling here. So, man, you've been really getting some news. I did a cool interview today on Sirius XM, and I did an interview in Ottawa last week. So it's like, that's how John Mack kind of connected the two of us, which is fantastic. And you're like making headway, which I love. You have like a little bit of a medical background, right? And your wife is a doctor. And let's just talk about that, like pushing the gyms through this COVID and how we can get to being reopened with some, maybe some changes in how we do things.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had mass shutdowns in Ontario of gyms and restaurants and everything. We just went into full lockdown. And I mean, like, to us, that was totally reasonable. And we didn't know anything about this virus, and everyone was scared. And it was just sort of precautionary principle. Let's just lock everything down and see sort of what happens with this as we get more data and info coming out of it, the way the virus behaves and all this. And so, moving from that first lockdown, we started to open back up, and they implemented different strategies for every business, not just gyms, but every business to sort of mitigate the spread of COVID. What I found it really interesting was what we were seeing, and what we still see in the data, is that comorbidities play a huge role in COVID outcomes. So we're seeing a high percentage of deaths and even hospitalizations and ICU admittance coming from people that have comorbidities, mainly metabolic diseases like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, etc. And what we know about fitness is that we know that fitness can, in a lot of cases, completely reverse these diseases, right? And that would be, reversing the disease is sort of a long-term outcome. But even in the short term, we can do things like, and we know this, and the data is out there, that like people with high blood sugar, high blood glucose, and hyperinsulinemia, type 2 diabetes, like we can start to lower blood sugar levels permanently with just good nutrition and exercise within 2 to 3 weeks. So within the very short term, if we know that high blood sugar is something that correlates with negative COVID-19 outcomes, and we have two very easy things, good nutrition and exercise, that can lower that hyperglycemia, right? The idea here is that we'll have less hospitalization, we'll have less ICU admittance, and we'll have less deaths, right? And what we weren't hearing from the politicians that were going on the radio every single day, we were not hearing that message. We weren't hearing it from public health. All we were hearing, which is still a great message, masks, social distancing, hygiene. Three very important factors to mitigate spread. We need masks. We need to have the social distancing, and we need to have the hygiene. But what's another thing that you could be preaching that is a very simple intervention for people to help increase their chances of survival if they get COVID, if they get this virus? It's going to be healthy eating, maybe lowering alcohol intake a little bit, and exercise. And so the message just wasn't out there. And so we started thinking, we're like, how do we get the message to the politicians that this is an important thing? And it's not just about the message, because at this point they are starting to talk a little bit about, okay, we got to get outside and go for walks, right? Mental health is a huge factor, and mental health aspects of exercise have played a huge role and have come to the forefront of the COVID conversation, simply because we've seen, obviously, suicide rates have increased throughout the pandemic because people aren't socializing as much. They're locked up. We're seeing people losing sort of their sense of purpose because of maybe losing jobs or not being able to stay into their daily routine. So the mental health aspect has come to the forefront of the conversation. And this is a lot of the reason why we're hearing public health preach, get outside, do some exercise outside. But the bottom line is that gym owners and community gym facilities like ourselves, we're leaders in these industries. And if we aren't allowed to to spread that message and educate people, and aren't supported to stay open in the long term, even if it's only the same people coming into the gym. Post pandemic, that's gonna have huge detrimental effect on health outcomes for generations to come. If all of a sudden all the gyms are wiped out because they haven't survived the pandemic, or because people are afraid to go into them. Now, it's sort of a multifactorial thing, because the Ontario government has done a really good job of providing financial support for us. We're very lucky. In the United States, a lot of gyms in the States are not as lucky. They haven't been provided financial support, so their numbers are dwindling. There's businesses gyms going out of business all the time. In Ontario, we've been lucky with the financial support, but I feel strongly that gyms have something to offer the community in terms of directly correlating to a positive COVID outcome. And the one thing that I think of here is someone who has hyperglycemia and needs to lower their blood sugar to get healthier. Typically, this population isn't going to start an exercise and nutrition intervention on their own, virtually in their house. They need a community. They need help from a coach, like we had talked about earlier, the leadership, the guidance, the education, right? And often that one-on-one human interaction, even if it's 6 feet away with a mask, right? They need that interaction to motivate themselves to walk in through the door and stick to something that's going to make them feel healthier. And so once people start to realize that this is such an important thing, and we cannot move forward only thinking of fitness as a recreational activity, but instead as an essential tool to increase the health of the community and to actually lower the burden on the healthcare system. Once we realize that, then we can start talking to the public health officials, the government officials, about how to implement robust COVID protocols on sort of a sliding scale that allow us to keep safe in the community during this pandemic, right? Instead of these blanket shutdowns that just sort of, they disrupt business, people fall off the wagon. People that are very regimented in their exercise routines, tons of them go home and their blood sugars go up. They put on 15 pounds. That increases their chances of negative COVID outcomes should they contract the virus, right? And so, for example, we haven't been told we have to wear a mask during exercise yet. I would be glad to come into the gym and do some low intensity exercise with a mask for an hour. And I'm sure tons of people would, right? Why hasn't this been implemented into the sliding scale of COVID protocols? Why haven't we been allowed to even just increase the distance, right? We're ordering, what's one thing that CrossFit home office has done, which is great. My wife is on the medical advisory board for CrossFit, and they put together basically a COVID protocol list for gyms. A lot of them in Ontario, I know, are following them. Many just have a couple points that are maybe off. They're pretty much the Ontario regulations as it stands, but there's a couple extra things. The really important one is a CO2 monitor, a CO2 detector, right? And a CO2 detector, it detects how much expiration of CO2, right, is in the environment. That would have a direct correlation to potential COVID transmission, right? If you have a higher concentration of CO2 in your room, in your building, right, you can assume that people are exhaling more of their air, right, into the environment, and that could potentially increase COVID transmission. So there's actually an airborne virus expert, an engineer in Virginia who helped out come up with these COVID protocols, and they did some tests, and the CO2 monitor is a completely legit way to measure this. but these standards haven't been set by the Ontario government, right? And so our goal is to A, convince them how important we are to the communities in terms of health and wellness, right? And then B, once they agree that we're worth the time, let's have a conversation about some of these extra things that we can put into our gym to keep COVID transmission down so that we can continue operating at a high level and continue keeping the community as healthy as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The physical side of things, like all these things make all the sense in the world. The upscale, the increasing somebody's metabolism, keeping them healthier, stronger. For me, like as that longtime police officer, I can say that coming off of like, you know, going to a fatality or finding somebody hanging in a closet, going to the gym was my outlet after my shift or during my shift. And I, you know, I used to think that those, like that kind of stress level was really peaked only for police officers, fire, you know, all those, you know, that you're seeing like in comparison to, but you can't compare stress from one person to the other. So my peak stress level with a dead body is the same peak stress level with somebody who, you know, just had something that maybe their memo was late. It just doesn't, to me, it didn't seem as important, but if that's their peak stress level, that's their peak stress level. And then when they came home for work that day, you know, they're not going to hit the gym now at 5:30 and go see their friends for an hour, take the exercise out of that, just seeing your friends for an hour and just laughing. But now throw exercise into that, you've like now set them up to go home, get their stuff ready for their next day of work, get themselves to bed, rather than come home, make dinner, and pour a bottle of wine, which just leads to the added, like you're saying, from the physical standpoint, the long-term effects of these closures are going to affect us, but also from that mental standpoint. And then that turns into physical now when you're, you know, you're consuming too much booze, drugs, whatever is going to happen, or any other negative vice for that matter, comes from these kinds of situations. So I really hope that, you know, and anything I can do to help you for sure, like this. I know we got a great community down here in Windsor. We got like 30 gyms. We randomly like put a charity together, but like right before this all happened and we all did this charity work together, and now it's become like a coalition to help us to support each other in every way that we can. So let us know what we can do. And I know we got your letter down here. We're going to try to start to get some people to sign that thing.
Yeah. And that's sort of the bottom line too, is like working together, right? And it's, you know, policy gets changed because of public opinion, right? And so if enough people stand up and say something, then they've got no choice but to listen. And you know, sort of like the mental health aspect is so huge, and that's why I think it's come to the forefront of the conversation. They're so focused, unfortunately, on those specific, the COVID numbers, like those the caseload numbers, like the hospitalization numbers, and like, it seems to make sense. Like if we can come up with a way, if we can convince them that we can literally have an effect on those numbers, then maybe there's an argument to be made there that we can put these COVID protocols in place and stay open a little bit longer. You know, obviously right now the situation in Toronto is pretty, in the Toronto area, is pretty crazy. There's a few ICUs I know that are full beyond capacity, and they're starting to install the field hospitals in Burlington, and you know, stuff is getting out of control. So, you know, there's a time and a place for this stuff, and the argument is not to stay open at all costs. Like, you know, it comes to a point where COVID cases are so high and deaths are out of control, we can't, you know, it doesn't make sense to stay open in certain scenarios. But there's a lot of scenarios, and even up in Ottawa here, like we were doing very well for a while, and the Ford government had implemented this graded regional approach, the green, the gray. We were from lockdown, and it's just like, nope, whole province, boom, right? And I can understand sort of the, you know, the logic behind that because of Christmas coming and all that, but it, I think our argument warrants a conversation about it. I think it warrants a conversation. And so I think, like you said, if we can just group together and sort of stand up for ourselves, then that might come in the near future.
Definitely. So what are some things that you've kind of put in place or or started to spark to get more gyms involved and get people, working together towards this big kind of, not so much argument, it's more just trying to really promote it to government officials to really start to see some of these stats that, are making a positive kind of prevention measure for everybody?
Yeah, well, one of the main things in terms of the gyms themselves, just reaching out to people, and obviously, like, I'm part of a couple Facebook groups that include a lot of gym owners in Ontario, and sort of through those Facebook groups, people sort of latch onto the message and they agree with it, and then they go to other people, and you guys found out, from some gym owners that were in this group, and et cetera, and obviously the news comes out and that helps. So the media, like social media and mainstream media, is a huge factor, right? Because obviously I don't have the time to call up every single person and be like, this is my stance, do you agree with me, right? So the media plays a huge role, and so podcasts like this are going to obviously really help. So Tony, you said you wanted to help. This is helping, right? This is huge here, because the message is going to get out, and more people are gonna sort of latch onto it and agree and feel like they can stand up. But other than that, it's about obviously bringing gym owners together with a similar message. But then also, right now, what we're trying to do is garner physician support, because ultimately the physicians are the ones that have the knowledge, they have the clout in the public health community, and these are the health professionals that the politicians are going to ultimately listen to, right? They're the ones that have the community's health and best interest at heart when it comes to health. And so if we can get them to basically, like you said, not argue, but promote this conversation, right, of health through fitness, then all of a sudden maybe we're going to start to see some policymakers turn their heads and say, okay, maybe we should listen to these guys. They've got like 50 to 200 physicians now that are saying the same thing, from all different types of practices, and then from there, I think maybe there's going to be some conversations that are had that will start moving things in the right direction. But those are pretty much the main things that I'm focused on right now.
Yeah, I just really hope that the government and sees, like, leadership truly isn't just, it doesn't mean saying yes to us. It means, it means listening. It means considering, and like you're not, as a leader, ever going to be the most educated person in the room. So listening to those people that do have a higher base knowledge, and then making an educated decision based on all those, submissions on what is the best plan. And then I feel like not reevaluating that plan is really what's kind of compromising people's safety, compromising our health, and compromising the economy. And I really hope that they start to reconsider those things. So speaking of finances and insurance, Murray Insurance. This episode of the Tango One podcast is sponsored by Murray Insurance and Financial Services in Kingsville, Ontario. They are Southwestern Ontario's #1 ranked Desjardins insurance agency by their clients, and owned by Garage Gym Kingsville OGs Ian and Kara Murray. Ian and Kara's team pride themselves on many of the high standards that the Garage Gym members have come to expect. They are experts in their industry. They have the best customer service in the industry, including claims concierge service, which is exclusive to their clients. And they focus on community, employing local team members and investing back into the Essex County community. They are a one-stop shop for everything to protect you, your family, and your assets, with the best policies in the industry. They even have incredible rates, especially when you combine your home, auto, and other insurance policies together with them. Give their team a call today or send them a text at 519-733-2331. All right, we're back. All right, so man, in closure, what is the ultimate success in terms of you for this year from a personal standpoint? Is the greater focus on, I guess it's got to be a balance, because I know you want both of these things. And I love to see somebody who's being as successful as you in your games, which you could continue to train for, without fighting for everybody else to be open. So that's very selfless of you. What, though, is your number one goal for this year?
Oh, man. That's you're not going to like this answer, man, because it's both. Like, honestly, and I know I can do both. So that's the thing is for me, it's always been a balance. It's always been a balance. And, you know, I came into CrossFit, you know, wanting to make it to the CrossFit Games. And it took me, you know, 7 years plus to do it. And you know, you know, I wanted to become the best coach in the world. And now I'm far from the best coach in the world, but at least, you know, I can say that I'm very proud to be part of the CrossFit seminar staff, which a lot of people, especially in the CrossFit world, consider some of the best coaches in the world are on that team. And so I get to learn from the best there. And, you know, I own part owner of a CrossFit gym. And it's, for me, my priority is being able to juggle all these things. And what's nice about them is that they all kind of blend together, right? Is like, for me to be able to be my best version of myself, husband, father now, affiliate owner, coach, athlete, I need to be able to spend time in these other domains because it allows me to just sort of refocus my mind a little bit. If you know, some of that stuff fell by the wayside, and during the first wave of COVID, and all I was doing, I was focusing on being an athlete, trying to get ready for the games. And sometimes that can be more stressful, because when you're not training, you think like, damn, I should be training. Like, I should be training. You're like, what can I do now to make myself better? Right? When really you should just do nothing. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do with your time? It's like, okay, well, I could fight for some Ontario gyms. I could, you know, work on my own gym a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. I could, you know, we could do some family stuff. So the priority is all of it. The priority is I'm going to make it back to the game. I'm going to be the best dad I can possibly be for my son. I'm going to try and be the best husband as possible. My wife's going back to work, so she's coming off mat leave. So, you know, I've made a New Year's resolution to be an awesome part-time stay-at-home dad. You know, I'm going to try to continue working on my craft as a coach. We're doing less seminars now that COVID is here, and when you're doing tons of seminars, it becomes very easy to stay in the groove because you're just constantly coaching, right? And now that there's less coaching to be done, my goal is to just sort of set aside a bit of time to make sure that I sharpen the axe a little bit in the coaching side of things. And they're all very, very important to me. And the lucky thing is, like I said, they all feed into one another. So I don't think that it's unrealistic to try to strive for all those things.
Good, man. And how you say something is how you do it too. And I love how you didn't say I want to be. I will be in the games. I will be the best father. Like I think that's huge. So
definitely.
Okay. All right, man. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, reach out to you for coaching or for help or just in general, we'll have this in the show notes. But what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, honestly, just my Instagram. You can it's a public profile, so you can just reach out on hit me up slide into my DMs. You know, at Pete Shaw 4, the number 4, all one word there, and I always answer. So just get in there, send me a message, and I'll hit you back up.
Good, man. Thank you so much. Congratulations for all your successes, and good luck, because the maternity leave, the back from leave thing is an adjustment. I'll tell you that. Brace yourself. You got this.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, I'm ready for it.
All right, man. And that's a wrap. Cheers.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate it.